Welcome to Theology, Things and Stuff. On this episode, we'll be interviewing my friend Nathan Frantz, a Christian, a businessman, a faithful servant to his pastor at a church in North Carolina, but an ultramarathoner. We're going to talk to him about what it takes to run ultramarathons and what his greatest achievement so far has been in that arena. I think you're going to be challenged. I think you're going to see insights and parallels to scriptural allegory. And maybe if you're a runner, you might be challenged to run a little bit further next time. You may notice some audio difference on this podcast because we shot the interview at an Airbnb where we were staying together when we were out of town at a church conference. But I don't think that should distract you too much. I hope you enjoy this interview, and here's our theme song.
Some important topics, some not so much, about where we began and where we'll end up, and everything in between, on Theology, Things and Stuff.
Welcome to Theology, Things and Stuff. Today I am sitting with a friend, Nathan Frantz, a ultramarathoner. So we're going to talk about running ultramarathons. So Nathan, fun. We're just starting this podcast. So before we start talking about this concept of like running more than a mile, tell me about you. Tell me where you're from. How old are you? How you got born again? Kind of bring everybody up to speed because they don't know who you are. It's always more important that people get to know you. And then when we start talking about the fact that you've run 500 miles, like as a race, it's not a marathon. It's not 3 marathons. It's like a lot of marathons. But so where are you from?
I'm from Asheville, North Carolina.
Born and raised.
I was born and raised there. Lived there my whole life. I grew up in church.
Okay.
My dad was a associate or co-pastor for a church for about, I think it was, honestly, I don't remember for sure, maybe till I was 9, I think, 9 or 10. We started the church in a basement or somebody's house, and it grew from that. We were in the church for a while.
What year was that?
So I was born in 85. I'm 39 currently. And it was probably in the, I don't know, early 90s is what I'm guessing. I don't remember.
So your dad helped pioneer a church in Asheville in the early 90s?
Yes.
Pentecostal, non-denominational, Pentecostal? Okay.
Pentecostal, non-denominational, I'd say that. He was associated with, he went to Christ for the Nations.
Okay. In Dallas, Texas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we were part of that till like, I'm pretty sure it was somewhere between the ages of 8 and 10.
Okay.
I don't remember for sure. And at that time, the head pastor had stepped down. Some things happened, and so my dad he took up the church best he could. It was a little bit of a hard situation. It was abrupt. It was not expected.
Sure.
So the church kind of stayed together for a little while, but it sort of began to fade, and it just didn't. My dad just didn't feel like it was the right thing to keep it going at the time.
As that child under an associate pastor, then pastor, is that when you gave your life to Christ, or?
You know, I'll be honest. I cannot, to this day, I couldn't tell you exactly when it happened.
Yeah.
I just be honest. I don't. I can remember. My parents said it was like when I was 5 or something like that. And I can vaguely remember going up to the altar and, praying the prayer. I remember getting baptized more than once, just because we went to a different church and they had a baptismal, and so I don't really have that, I got saved.
Sure.
I just don't. It's been a part of me my whole life.
Yeah. All right, so then it sounds like the church eventually folded. Mm-hmm. All right, and then did you guys move and start serving at another church?
Yeah, so we probably for about 2 years, my dad we went to quite a few different churches trying to figure out where we were supposed to be. And so that was kind of, and then we ended up back at where I'm at currently, at Glory Tabernacle with Pastor Ronnie and Kathy Pittman, in Asheville.
How long have you been at that church now?
Well, I think I was about 11 when we started going to church there.
So 28 years?
Yeah, that's a long time.
It's a long time to be committed to a church.
It's a long time.
You don't see that much anymore, but that's fantastic. All right, so did you go to college? Did you graduate high school and then go to college?
I graduated high school. I mostly went to private Christian schools.
Okay.
I went to public school for 2 years in 5th and 6th grade. Then our church had a school. I went there until it closed on my senior year. I had to homeschool. It was either go back to public school or homeschool for my senior year. And I was like, I'm not going to go back to public school for 1 year. So anyway, I graduated. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I think I probably didn't go to college for at least, I don't know, it was a year, something like that. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start going to college. I don't know what I want to do.
Sure.
I had a job at the time. I was working at Best Buy. So, I was making decent money, but I was like, I need to go to school, figure out what I want to do. So I went to school for probably 2 years, mostly just getting basic education stuff, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then about the time I decided, okay, I think I want to do construction management. Somebody at our church who was a general contractor, almost the same. It was God, because it was the same time that I was planning to go start the schooling that he offered me a job to work for him. And for me, it was just like, I can go get paid to learn this, or I can go pay to learn it. And so it was kind of a no-brainer in my opinion.
So jump in the workforce.
Yeah.
Is that what you still do to this day?
Yep. I worked for him for 8 years, and then he basically came to me and said, I think it's time you should go out on your own. It wasn't like a firing experience. He thought it was time that I should try to, learn this myself.
Okay.
While still working for him, actually, it wasn't.
So you transitioned
into working for myself.
All right.
And which is what I still do today.
And that allows you the freedom to be able to travel with your pastors like you do and support them.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So the real reason, obviously, I wanted to interview you is because I have a lot of friends that are runners. I'm a runner. I'm not anywhere serious in a caliber. I got one friend named Jeff who he's run a couple of Ironman, some marathons, and then 1 or 2 50-mile races. But you've run beyond that. So I want to talk about how long have you been a runner? When did you get into running?
Well, growing up in Asheville, which is mountainous, and our family was always just on the weekends, when we weren't on Saturdays, it was go outside somewhere.
Sure.
We were hiking or,
somewhere in the Blue Ridge.
Yeah, I was starting to ride a bike like on the trails probably when I was, 8 or 9, with a Huffy. And so I wouldn't say I started really running until I was probably in my 20s. Like, thinking about what exactly I'm going to run kind of thing. It was more, sure, I'd run races, but it wasn't serious. It was just
5Ks and 10Ks.
Yeah, it was just more, okay, sure, why not? Somebody'd say, hey, I'm going to go do this. I'd be like, okay, sure. I didn't train for it, just would show up and run. And then I was, 28, I think. I started doing the Spartan races, which is a obstacle course race, mud run, whatever you want to call it.
Muddy Buddy?
Yeah.
I did a Muddy Buddy once with my brother. So, but that's like 8 miles total.
Yeah. Well, so the Spartan races were 3 different lengths at that time. There was like a short course, a medium course, and a long course. The longest course was, I think, 15 miles.
So what do you do during a Spartan race?
You're doing barbed wire crawl. It's typically all trail, serious, like very technical trail, monkey bars, rope climbs. They had a spear throw. You had to throw a spear and hit a target. It's a lot of it's basically the idea of, what a
Spartan warrior.
Yeah, Spartan warrior, or you could think of like military training. They basically, it's like incorporating that into a mud version.
Sure.
And I don't know, it intrigued me because it's full body, you're not just, I enjoyed running, but this was like, okay, I don't just get to run.
Is the Spartan the one that has the electrical fence that you crawl under at the end?
No, that was Tough Mudder. I've done one. I did one of those too. But the first one I did, we came to Asheville. My buddy, I was like, hey man, this looks fun. We should go do this. He was in high school at the time, I think. But he was running track. And so I kind of was like, okay, yes, we'll train to do this together and we'll go do it. And we found a local gym that, kind of helped you figure out, the obstacles and things like that. And anyway, I did it and I came in, I think it was 9th place.
Out of,
I don't know, like quite a few hundred.
Yeah.
At least.
So 9th place in your age division or 9th place overall?
9th place overall.
And this is when you realize maybe you're built to do this kind of stuff?
Yeah. It was just, it started that fire.
So for folks that are listening, how tall are you?
I'm 5'9".
And what do you weigh?
About 155 pounds.
Okay, so you're a slight of frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like you're 5'9" and 280.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not a big guy. I'm not a small guy, but I wouldn't call myself a big guy either.
Sure. All right, so you come in 9th.
Yeah.
But I like what you said, though. You've never done this before, but you find a gym to help you meet your goal. I think a lot of folks aim for something, but they don't have anybody there to help them realize it. And I read an article one time that said it was about the psychology of goals, and I really like it because they use the example of learning to walk on your hands. And they said, obviously gymnasts make hand walking look easy, but they said if you were to go and train with a gymnast to learn to walk on your hands, the rule of thumb is it would take you no less than 1 year to learn to do it and to do it with your toes pointed. And that's you working at it 4 or 5 days a week. So the whole psychology was you can try to walk 2 or 3 steps on your hands and fail and try it for a couple weeks. But if you realize from an expert that to obtain this goal is going to take you at least a year to do it like it looks like it's done in the movies or the Olympics, then it doesn't discourage you when you're 6 months into it and you're still lame. Yeah. And I think that's important for people. If they set goals, go find somebody that has obtained it and let them tell you the reality of this is what it's going to look like. So I like what you said because, where we're going with this discussion here is that you run these unbelievable distances, but it starts off by saying, let's do something crazy, but let's also get somebody to tell us what it's going to take. So I don't know. I watch a lot of folks aim for goals, never get the reality of what it's going to really take to get there, and they quit before they even get started. So all right, so they helped you. You came in 9th. Yeah. Then what? So
then it went on from there. It started a fire in me, and I was racing a lot. Training became more serious. It was pretty much I saw all the obstacle course style races.
Rucks.
I didn't do rucks at the time. That really wasn't a big thing. It was just pretty much all these Spartan races, different distances, and I saw myself continue to progress in it. Eventually was winning I won, I think, first place 2 times, and then there was quite a few of second and thirds, and at different races.
Is this a small community? You start to see the same people, or is it a pretty...
It is sort of a small community in that sense that you do see the same people, which is also kind of what drove it. I helped develop a team. There really wasn't much of a prize, but we developed a team anyway. We thought maybe eventually there might be some kind of prize. So we had seen a lot of people. I live in North Carolina. Excuse me. I live in North Carolina, and there was a lot of guys we also knew in South Carolina. So we made a team called Carolina Chaos. And we just basically, became more of a chat. And when people were going to a race, we could share rooms together, and things like that. And so that helped drive you had people that held you accountable, that you said you were going to be there. And also that, when you showed up, there were people that looked to see how you were going to do. They knew what you'd done in the past.
So there's a camaraderie and an accountability.
Exactly. And a competitive. A lot of the guys that was on the team, like, I was competing against them.
Yeah.
Which made it fun. They're friends, but when you're at race time, it's you're not enemies, but you're trying to beat the other guy, and but it's fun. And so just that I had never experienced that growing up. I played like Little League baseball and football, but through high school, didn't play organized sports. It wasn't an option.
Yeah.
So I never had the opportunity. So this was like kind of a new thing for me. And so it's also what I think drew me in, and the fact that I was doing well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we did that for, I don't know.
So
quite a few years.
How many races a year were you doing?
I honestly don't know, but it was
2 or 3 a month.
It was probably 2 a month. But you don't race all year, so you'd say maybe 8 months out of the year you're racing.
Okay.
And then at least 2 or 3 a month.
And traveling outside the state, maybe keeping it in the southeast.
Mostly, yeah. I never went for those races. I think the farthest I went was New Jersey.
Okay.
We never really went west. There was a lot of races out west, but it was expensive. And at the time, I couldn't afford more than what I was already doing.
Yeah.
So.
So how many miles a week were you running to train for this?
At the time, I didn't have a coach per se. And I couldn't tell you exactly, maybe, I don't know, if I had to guess 30 miles, 20 to 30 miles. I would focus on the running portion, but also on the rest of it, because you got to be strong. There was heavy carries, there was a sandbag carry, there was a bucket carry. So there's a lot of grip intensive.
So you're committed to the Spartan style race at this point?
At that time, yeah, that's all I did.
Okay.
And so that time I was focused on training that specific way.
All right.
And it wasn't until 2020, I guess, when with COVID, basically everything shut down and things had started to change in that community, the way the races were getting directed and things like that. So there was already kind of a falling away from it, not just from me, but from other athletes like me. And
so the Spartan style races, is it losing its luster with the whole community? It's the fad is passing?
Yeah, I think it is as a whole. Partially because of I think a lot of it has to do with the way the company ran it.
Okay.
They stopped paying their athletes. Like when I would win, I would get prize money, and then I would also get a free race. And I could choose to use that free race, or I could sell it. And so, there was a way to at least recoup your race entry and maybe help pay for some travel.
What's the cost of a race entry?
It's like $200.
Okay.
And then you got to get there, you got to have a hotel and all this stuff. So, it adds up.
Okay.
But that really wasn't the main reason. And then, COVID happened, and it kind of gave you time. No races are going on to figure out if this is still what you want to do.
Yeah.
A lot of people I know changed what they were doing. There was a lot of people that stopped doing it. There's still some that still do it, but at that time, I had a friend. We'll get where we're trying to get to here, who was like, "I think you should do a 100-mile race."
So Spartan race is 15 miles with cling challenges, spear throwing, monkey bars, and barbed wire, and you're going to jump from 15 miles to a 100-mile race.
Well, I won't say I jumped from that, because in between then, I had done a marathon. I trained for a first marathon. I don't remember what year it was. My friend, the same guy, I talked into doing the Spartan race. He's like, he wanted to do a marathon. I was like, okay. So we went and did the Knoxville Marathon. I did pretty well at it. My goal, at that time I did have a coach.
So once again, because I know as a pastor and someone who trains people, I hear these target words you say, like, you have another goal.
Yeah.
And you can't get there by yourself. So even for a hobby, you pay the coach, you just pull yourself under somebody. How does that work?
Yeah. I'll back up just a little bit, because I just remembered something. So before I ran this marathon, I had another friend did the Spartan races, and I'm training for Spartan races, and he's like, hey, I'm going to go do this marathon in near Asheville. You should come do it with me. He lived in Myrtle Beach. So I was like, okay, well, he's coming to my town. The least I can do is go run this race with him. I didn't know anything about it. And
were you trained for a marathon at this point? Like
at this time, no, but it was that you had about like to sign up for it, and then it was probably 4 months. No, it was.
So if you're already running
3 months.
15 miles on a long haul,
Yeah.
this is just an additional 11. It's not
crazy.
No.
But so anyway, he's like, you got to be on the computer this day. It sells out. Sign up. I didn't look into it at all. I just signed up and said, okay, sounds like fun. And when I signed up, it was a mountain marathon. It was straight up towards Mount Mitchell and then back down, and then all on trail. And once I looked into it, and like you start reading about it, it's like one of the hardest mountain marathons. You know, there's just all this like drama around it. It sounded like pretty hard. I mean, it snows half the time.
Yeah.
So at that time, I had only I didn't look into it. I was racing, and so it kind of, things got away from me. And now I've got 4 weeks before the race is supposed to happen. And I'm like, I got to figure out what this thing is. And then I'm like, I don't know how to train for this. And so I found a different coach at that time. It was just somebody was going to a gym, and he had been helping me out, learning some different things. And I was like, can you write me a program to get me ready for this race in 4 weeks? He's like, well, I don't know if I can get you ready for 4 weeks, but we can get you across the finish line. I was like, I guess this is what we got. So anyway, we completely changed my training program. I went no more Spartan race training at this time. And he got me ready, and we did. I mean, I ended up coming, I think, in 9th place that race. And that was an even bigger race.
Sure.
I was actually, at that time, so it's part of what drew me to the Spartan race. I don't want to talk too much about this, but is the idea that you had to be a fast runner, but running was not the only thing. That you also had to be strong. You know, there was different things. Like, I knew that I wasn't the fastest runner. Like, you know, I'm not, probably, maybe if I'd have been trained in high school, I could have been collegiate, but I knew that I wasn't that at this time. So I felt like I needed something to help take their edge off. You know, maybe I could even this. And so when I did come in so well placed at this one, and it was just running, it made me feel, you know, I was like, okay, maybe there's a little more.
So it was 13 miles uphill, up Mount Mitchell, and 13 miles down.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
What's the total time on that?
I think I did it it was just under 4 hours.
And uphill, uphill.
Yeah, it's a very different, it's not, you can't compare it to a normal marathon.
Just under 3 days. Under 3 or under 4?
I think it was under 4.
Under 4.
I think. Honestly, I don't remember. But that was the 9th place time. So if that tells you.
How many entered? What was it?
That one is probably 200 or 300, but it's a pretty highly competitive race.
And it's a tight race.
Yeah. And so I didn't know it was competitive at the time either. I just figured it's a local race, and but I found out later that a lot of the top athletes of the area come there to do this race. But anyway, fast forward.
This was a turning point when you realized maybe you do have what it takes to do these long distance.
Yep, for sure.
Ultra marathon.
Because this is the longest I've ran,
as
far as time goes and distance. And so it wasn't too big of a stretch when my friend said, okay, let's do this Knoxville Marathon. I just knew that now, okay, this is all road. I can set a new goal. My watch, my Garmin watch has a race predictor on it. And before I did this marathon, it race predicted that I could do like a 2:47 marathon.
And all that, so we're recording this in March of 2025. So all of this has taken place in the last 4 years. COVID, 4.5 years.
No, sorry. That probably happened before COVID.
Okay,
that was before
the Mount
COVID.
Mitchell race.
The Mount Mitchell race and the Knoxville.
Okay.
That all happened before. And anyway, so I got a coach. We'll fast forward to getting the coach. I made a goal based on a watch.
2:47.
2:47. That was what I gave him, and he based my workouts on that. It's a completely different experience running a marathon on the road.
Yeah.
Was not anything like the Mount Mitchell was hard, but it's just a completely different experience because it's just constant high speed, But it was a good experience. I didn't hit the goal. I hit 2:59 or 58, something like that. So I was shy, but I didn't really, honestly, had no idea. I didn't know a lot about running marathons at the time.
Sure.
I didn't realize that still was a pretty good time.
Yeah.
I think it still would have at that time. It still would have qualified me for Boston, which I was ecstatic about.
Yeah.
I didn't run Boston that year, but just to be able to qualify.
So what is that? 7 minutes? 7 minute miles? 3 hours?
7? No, it's 6. Like 55 or 6:50. So it's under 7.
We're going to call that sevens. But the fact that you ran 26 sub 7 miles.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, you're not Kenyan or Ethiopian, and you're not training at 10,000 feet.
Right.
That's impressive.
Yeah. No.
Especially for this is your first real marathon.
Yeah, it was my first real marathon. So I had that. That's the background. 2020 happens. I didn't really race a whole lot. There wasn't anything to race. It was just I had some friends, and we would go out and make up adventures and things like that. So it still ran, but there was no real goal at that time.
And you're still serving your church.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So this is your hobby. This is like what you do after work. You go run. This is what you do on Saturday.
Yes. That's my big thing. And having the pastor I do, he doesn't let me forget it, and I'm glad. But, first things first. You got to, hobbies are great, but, you got to serve a church, go to church, be a man of God. And if you have time for this, that's great.
Yeah.
So it's a balancing act. It's definitely.
How many miles a week were you running to train for the Knoxville Marathon?
Probably still
20 to 30?
No, we're up to like 40 to probably in the 40s.
Okay.
Call it 40s.
What's your long day like? 15, 18?
Yeah, we'll say it 15 to 18 average.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did the Knoxville. We go through 2020. I guess it was 2021. Yeah. Previously, 2020 was the year that I did my friend, that was when she's like, yeah, you should go do a 100-miler. I think you'd be good at it. We had just gotten done with previously that first year, so I forgot about this. I did my longest run. We decided to sign up for a 24-hour Tough Mudder. This is the world's toughest mudder. So it's 24 hours. You do a loop course, and a bunch of us said, we're going to go do this together.
So what kind of stuff does a Tough Mudder entail?
So the Tough Mudder is similar to Spartan. You have obstacles, but there's a lot more water obstacles. So You're having to be submerged in water a lot. A lot of the obstacles end with you jumping in water. There's an obstacle that you basically have to drown yourself. There's a chain link fence over a pond, and you crawl underneath it with your face up against the fence to get air.
Okay. So then my thought is, if we're doing 24 hours, we're talking about blisters, raw feet, because you're soaked, chafing.
And the thing that happened in that race, so the goal was 45 miles in 24 hours. That was the goal at that race. Like the top people at that time were getting 100 miles. It was like
wow.
There was usually only one or two people that did it, but.
So you just ran the loops for 24 hours to see how many you could get.
5-mile loops. But that race particularly, it was outside of Atlanta, and it was in November, and the temperatures have been in the 50s and 40s at night. So it's been pretty nice. The weekend that we do the race, a cold front moves in, and it got below 32. Oh. It was like 30 degrees that night.
Oh.
You were allowed to wear wetsuits, but I had only brought like a shorty, which is a thinner wetsuit, and there's a lot of water. I mean, a lot of water. Like you get off the course, and the first thing you have to do is go through this like sluice of water. I don't even remember what the obstacle was, but you had to get in water immediately that was practically over your head. And I only got 33 miles or something like the 30. It was basically, 30 something miles in 13 hours. And I started getting hypothermia.
Really?
So
you couldn't keep your body temperature up, even with all that.
Even with all that. And the thing was you had no heat sources.
Yeah.
The race didn't allow you to have any kind of heaters. There's no heater to escape to. The only heater that they had was in the medical tent. And if you went in the medical tent for more than 5 minutes,
you're DQ'd.
You got DQ'd. So you get a mark on your hand, and if you didn't get out of the tent in 5 minutes, with that, they would mark you when you got out. And so that really wasn't an option. So anyway, it was a very humbling experience.
So what were the best numbers turned in for that race?
That race, there was a 100-mile finish.
Really?
The key was they had extremely thick wetsuits. They actually had to close some of the obstacles because they were freezing over.
Really?
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it was terrible. So me and one of my friends, she took out I think 2 laps before I did, and then I did, and then my other 2 friends, they managed to make it to 40 miles, and then they quit. It was just terrible. And so that was my first long distance experience. And after that same friend that quit, she talked me into doing this 24-hour race, another 24-hour race. And so it was in the beginning of the year of 2020 in South Carolina. And it was 24 hours of just a really short loop. It was like 3 miles over and over. And the goal was 100 miles. I still have my coach. We had, completely dropped out the OCR stuff, the obstacle course.
Okay.
Now we're just focusing on, trying to make it 24 hours. And the goal was 100 miles, but really the big goal was to run the entire 24 hours.
And not stop.
And I mean,
bathroom breaks.
Yeah, you might stop a little bit, but not to quit. The last race, I had to quit at 13 hours. I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to be able to continue racing the entire time. And so, which I did. About 3/4 of the way through, things got pretty rough. Got some really bad chafing, and it just wasn't great. I was going super slow at the end.
How many miles did you get?
I got about 80 miles. Yeah.
You run 80 miles in one shot.
It was, 80 miles in 24 hours.
Most people don't even drive 80 miles in one shot.
I sometimes I think about that. But yeah.
So how do you remedy chafing? Clothing, powder, salve?
All those things you try. It didn't, that particular night, it did nothing seem to help. At that point, I was just suffering through it.
Bleeding?
I never got to that point, but there's a video of me finishing, and it looks like I've been riding a horse.
Because you're trying to keep your thighs apart?
Yes. I literally have a set of poles, and I'm going like this. It was terrible. But I did win. I won that race,
you won.
Too. I mean, I won. Granted, I think there was only 4 finishers. But, hey, a win's a win.
A win's a win.
I got 80 miles, ran the 24 hours. So now I have this new goal. I got to get 100 miles.
In 24 hours.
24 hours. Yeah, 24 hours. So from that point, it was COVID that year. That was the only race I was able to get in that year before everything started getting canceled. I think I did some other stuff that year. I don't remember any specific big things.
I want to go back real quick. So training for a 100-mile, 24-hour race, what are your weeks like? How many miles a week to get that kind of endurance?
So you're still, honestly, your averages, they get up to maybe 60. I mean, this is relative to whoever your coach is, but
60 miles a week.
Yeah, okay. Well, you get up to 60 miles a week. You're probably still overall the span of the whole training block, which for 100 miles, you really want the training block to be at least 6 weeks, preferably 8 weeks. So you might still only average 40 something miles a week.
Okay.
But you're in your peak, at your highest, is going to be 60, maybe 70.
And then you back off like a week or 2 or 3 prior to the race to let your body recoup?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have a taper, and you can look at it. You could look at the graph like a map. I mean, like a mountain. Basically, you peak, and then you come back down. It's the same kind of idea. And the coach we're talking about coaches, how I found the coach I still have to this day, actually. He ran some of the races locally. He owned one of the local running shops. I ran his races, and he just put on a really good race. I knew he had done a lot of ultra racing. So I knew he had experience.
Yeah.
And had a lot of good experience, was successful. And I really liked his approach to running, just talking to him, being around him a little bit. And so that's, who I went to for a coach. And so, he's still my coach. He's the one that coached me through that race. We get through 2020, and then 2021 comes around, and the friend who's tried to talk me into doing this 100, so she was supposed to do it with me, and she didn't. She backed out. Her and my buddy ended up just crewing for me, which I'm thankful for, but it was just like, really? You talked me into this and you don't show up? Well, she showed up to help. But anyway.
But not to suffer.
Yeah. And, well, she had also said she was going to do Boston the following year. So I said, well, I'll do Boston. There was a group of them going. I was like, sign me up. I'll get qualified. I think Knoxville must have been the year before, because I was still qualified. I don't remember having to run another race.
So explain that. So so many people want to do Boston because it's the most famous, praiseworthy, glorious marathon. So they have to put a qualifier. So is a 3-hour marathon qualifier, right? And you have to run a race that is a qualifier,
right?
And then the time. What's the time?
So the time basis is based on whether you're obviously male or female, and then also on your age.
Okay.
So it changes I think the age groups are like 5 years or something like that. Currently, for a male who is under the age of like 28, I think, or 29, it's like, it's 3 hours. And you can't just run a 3-hour anymore because of the race. There's so many people that want to get in the race. Almost every year, there's basically a cut down. So you ran a 3-hour marathon, great. You should have qualified, but we've got so many people, we actually have to make the qualifier 2:55. And so if you didn't run below a 2:55, you're not going to get in this year.
Yeah.
So I don't remember if I had to run another race or not. Either way, I remember I qualified. I think I did run another race. That's right. I ran Wilmington. It must have been the following year. It all runs together, but
no pun intended.
Yeah. Anyway, so I did run another marathon. I'm pretty sure it was after that 100-miler, but something's not adding.
So did you qualify for the Boston?
I qualified for Boston, ran this next marathon, managed to cut time off again. I'm still trying to hold this goal of 2:47. And ended up with 2:51 or 52. So I shaved off quite a few minutes from the last race. I'm still not hitting that time.
Yeah.
So the following year, I'm pretty sure it was 2021, may have been 2022, somewhere in there. I ended up going to Boston. And so I'm trained up for that.
How many run Boston? It's
like, it depends on the year. Every year it gets bigger. I want to say, I honestly can't remember, 10,000? Is it 10,000? It just seems so big, but I think that might be correct.
Sure.
And so I get into that race feeling great, and ended up I did end up PRing on that race, which is personal record for people who aren't familiar with the vernacular. And I got 2:45.
Wow.
Almost on the money.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was, and anybody who's run Boston knows you don't PR in Boston. Like, nobody really ever does that because typically it's a hard race because it's not flat, it's uphill, it's downhill.
And it's a lot of people.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of factors. Everybody runs hard, fast in the beginning because it starts out downhill and all the hills, the big hills are in the end. But I PR'd. And so, that I'd hit this goal, and not only hit the goal, but I hit it at Boston. It was a pretty awesome moment. I'm not gonna lie. But, so I've done Boston now. That was like one of the things that, I'd always wanted to do. And so we're gonna get back to this other goal.
The 100 miles.
Yeah, the 100 miles. That's right. I remember now what happened in 2020. I had signed up for another race that year to do a 24-hour race. And it got canceled because of COVID. And so my coach put on a local, he had all these runners that had races that got canceled. So he put on a backyard ultra. You run whatever distance you were supposed to run in your race. And we're gonna set up a 5-mile loop around my house. My house will be the aid station. And y'all can...
So 5 miles to a neighborhood, 5 miles to a community, that's a big
basically,
loop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was it 5 miles or 3? It was 3K, 5K, sorry. It was 3 miles. And part of where he lives is part of his gravel, most of it's pavement, a small uphill through farm country. It's a pretty area to run, not that much traffic. So anyway, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. And the friend who had talked me into doing the other 100 miler, her and her boyfriend show up to help my other buddy, and I get feeling great, get about, I don't know, halfway through, and it's rough. It's getting rough. My legs feel like they are just so swollen. I don't know why. It got extremely hot that day.
Are you 50 miles in, or are you just 12 hours in?
I was just 12 hours in. I don't think I was 50 miles in yet. I think I did hit 50 miles somewhere not far off of 12 hours.
What month is this in?
July, June, or it was late June. Yeah.
In Asheville.
Yeah, it was that. Actually, no, it was early June. Sorry, it was June, second week in June, because it was the same week as my other race was supposed to be. But
it's still humid.
It was unseasonably very hot that day.
Yeah.
It got up to almost 90 degrees. Normally, it doesn't get that hot.
No.
So I get to 50-mile mark somewhere in that 12 to 13 hours. So that seemed good, but things just went downhill from there. Nobody else was running this distance. Pretty much by the next morning, everybody else was done.
And you're still going?
I'm still going. It's been 24 hours, and I still have like 13 miles to go.
But you're not going to stop?
Well, I'll be honest. I mean, I figured out what was wrong with my legs. They had gotten sunburnt, so they were like super swollen from being on them, and because of the sunburn, and like my calves. And my friend talks. We finally. I mean, it's not a real race, so we decided.
At this point, so you've run 87 miles. This is the longest distance you have run.
Yeah.
So it's another PR.
It is another PR.
But you're sunburned.
It was sunburned. It's not an official race. There's no time limit. There's nothing holding me back from getting that 100 miles other than me.
Pain.
And pain. So my friend, we figure out a new strategy. We're going to just do these little bitty out and backs. It's like a half a mile from my coach's house to the end. And it's all flat, it's gravel, and then we're going to turn around and come back. We're going to do 1 mile out and back. And that was all I could motivate myself to do. But and then I started adding up like how long this was going to take, and it just.
So how slow has your mile pace gotten?
Oh, it's bad.
Like 15, 20 minute miles?
20-ish. Yeah.
And you were running 6:45s in Boston.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you obviously don't start out a 100-miler at that kind of pace.
Sure.
I've learned a lot from those races, but you start out slow. It's very slow, and that's had always been the problem. With any of my long distances, I started out too fast.
So you're talking 4 miles an hour. So that's 15-minute miles is what you're going to average anyway if you're going to get 100 miles in 24 hours, approximately.
Approximately, yes.
Okay.
Yes, correct. But you got to factor in like your brakes.
Yeah.
So really the pace is about an 12-minute mile is ideal because that gives you time.
Yeah.
To be able to eat, because it adds up fast.
How many calories do you burn on 100 miles?
More than you can consume. I
Really?
can tell you that. You can't once you get past about a 50K, you're not really able to consume enough calories anymore. You already go into a deficit. So you're just consuming as much as you possibly can, which is a whole other part of the training. You're training your body to eat as well. You have to
eat while you're running.
Eat while you're running and consume as many calories as you can, which I say as many. We usually try to do about 40 grams of carbohydrates an hour or 250 calories an hour is the goal. So you have to train your stomach to be able to handle that kind of nutrition while
But that's still only like 6,000 calories.
Yeah, but that's about all you can consume. It's all about all your body's going to be able to process and absorb. That's why you go into a deficit.
Yeah, because you burn 800 or 900 calories an hour.
Yeah, it's not possible to be able to make it up. So that's the other part of an ultramarathon is you definitely go into a deficit no matter what.
Yeah.
But you're just trying to stay ahead of the game as much as you possibly can.
So did you finish this?
So we finished. I got 100 miles.
How long? How many hours?
32 hours.
Wow, so 8 more hours to get those 13 miles.
It was terrible.
Oh, 8 hours to get 13 miles.
Yeah. It wasn't quite 8, because I guess it was. Yeah, I think that's right.
Wow.
It was forever. Because I remember sitting down and doing the math when I hit 24 hours and it was just so long. I was like, I don't know. I just don't know if we can. I've got, like you said, I was thinking of all the good things. I PR'd. I'd done more than 24 hours. And my friend's like, what's stopping you? You came here to do 100 miles, I thought.
Yeah, you try my body on right now. Tell me what you think. All right, so then that painful, slow win encourages you to now take it to the next level or to do more 100 milers.
So I did, that was the year, so that 2020, I did that. And then the next year, I was already planning to do Boston. But the race that I was supposed to do that year had gotten moved. So we were going to do it the next year. So I did Boston, and then I had this race in June again. It was another 100. Basically, it was the actual 100-mile race. And I trained for it. I kind of went into a different knowing some new things. Start out slower, start out way slower than you think. And just learned a lot more about nutrition, all these different things, and ran another 100-miler. And this one was a local race, but it was pretty. I still think there's probably only like maybe 200, 300 people in it. And it's a 24-hour setup loop. You can run as many loops as you want. It's not about it is whoever has the most mileage wins.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's not a 100-mile race. It's just 24 hours. And I ended up getting 112 or 14 miles.
Wow.
And in 24 hours and won. And it was just a completely different experience than I had the previous year with this terrible 30-something hour, 100 miles. And then here I am, and when I got done, I was running sub-8s. We were running the last 3 laps like
sub-8 minute miles.
And so it's just crazy, like, to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But it was all about conserving your energy and just holding back, and it was just so many little things. Yeah, so many little strategy things.
Okay, so since I'm a pastor, we always spiritualize stuff, but I'm just thinking, Hebrews 12, it's like run with patience the race that's set before you, laying aside all the weights. Yep. So obviously these are tricks you're learning for this natural race. You're learning how to eat, learning what shoes work for you, learning what underwear works, what kind of clothing works on your chest, on your nipples, so that you don't chafe those. I guess it's a lot of trial and error. Yeah. And honest, so is there anybody who's out there that can coach someone at this stage that's doing 100-mile races? Or is this kind of a relatively new?
Well, at this time, the guy that I chose to have my coach, he had already done.
So he can teach you.
Yeah. I knew that he had done them, and not only had he done it previously, but he had won some as well. He was successful at it, and he was local, so that was all those were benefits, and that's why I picked him. And I obviously I did the work. He prescribed the work and
you did it,
and I did it. But I do owe credit to him for giving me the
coaching. So
it took me to put in the effort, which we can obviously draw spiritual something from this. I mean. The pastor, he lays the work. He you stand up and you tell your people how many times a week you have church, at least 3 times a week. Yeah. And so, but then they have to do the work.
They got to do it. They got to put the work in.
Or, because I know I'm good friends with this guy now who's my coach, and we talk about athletes all the time and people he deals with. And I mean, it sounds like pastoring so much. It's not even funny.
I'm sure attitude, disagreement. Yes. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yes. I'm like, he's a pastor.
He just doesn't know it.
Yeah. It's just like, wow. Because I mean, people are the same everywhere. Yeah. And it's just so
And they
funny.
react to authority and experience the same way.
Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how much your coach pioneered before you. If you don't listen to him, if you don't heed his, you're going to have to be stupid and reinvent the wheel.
Yep.
All right, so let's fast forward. So how many 100-mile races or 100-plus mile races did you run before this, what's the trail called?
It's called the Palmetto Trail.
The Palmetto Trail. Before you guys, because we're going to this 500-mile race you ran, 500-mile run.
Yeah.
How many 100-mile plus races did you get under your belt before you guys decide, let's see if we can break a record on the Palmetto Trail?
I think actually,
and by the way, it just sounds stupid that you go from let's run 5Ks, let's run some Tough Mudders, hey, let's do a marathon, hey, let's qualify for the Boston, let's set a PR for the Boston, and then let's just run a 3-mile loop for 30 hours.
Yeah.
What else can we do? I know. Let's run 500 miles.
Well, so I actually don't think I did another 100-miler.
Yeah, and after you did 2 or 3 of these?
So I did actually do another 100 miles. My coach actually got into a race, a 200-mile race, and he asked me to come be crew and pacer. So
what people don't understand is that when you run a race, you have somebody who come alongside you for a distance and help you keep your pace. Mm-hmm. They'll peel off. Somebody fresh will come in and replace them to help keep you on that goal, that goal pace. Okay.
And in that race, which was the following year, so 2022, I ended up doing that with him, and I ended up running 100 miles over 3 days.
With him as a pacer.
Yeah. So I got 100 miles in there.
And I once took 3 days to backpack 35 miles.
I've done that too. That's pretty enjoyable, actually, But
I did have a 40-pound pack, but
But yeah, me and the friend, we actually started talking about this at that 24-hour Tough Mudder. We kind of had thrown the idea around then, and so here it is. Like 4 years later, I guess.
The idea of doing a 500-mile race.
So it wasn't the part of the craziness is it started off with what we thought was about 300 miles, because on the website of the race, it's not a race, on the trail, it says like 200 and something miles of trail. And then we started looking into it.
This is the Palmetto Trail in South Carolina.
Correct.
And it goes from what city?
From
one town?
Yeah, from northern South Carolina. I cannot remember the name of the town now. It's north of Spartanburg and all the way to Charleston.
So it runs from basically border to border.
Yes,
Spartanburg's all the way in the west, all the way up near North Carolina.
Yeah, and it's farther north than that. It's about
5 miles over the border from Asheville.
Yeah.
So then it's going to run the whole length of the whole state to the coast down at the southeast.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, you say 500 miles, and I'm like, that's the whole state.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It's pretty hard to really wrap your head around. I mean, most people, honestly, beyond about a half marathon, most people just they can't comprehend it.
Yeah.
It's so beyond what they understand that you might as well be, talking about something, going to Mars. But anyway.
You're looking at a map, it says 250 miles of trail.
We thought it was, exactly, trail. Then we find out that we actually started looking into it more and we realized, oh wait, there's actually it's like close to 400 miles of the Palmetto Trail. But just the other mileage is not trail.
It's roads.
It's roads or, something like that.
Sidewalks.
And then we look into it even more and we find the guy who had done the record before and his total mileage is like 500 miles. And we're like, where did this extra mileage come in? Well, the trails, all the sections are not connected. So you have to run sections on the road to get to the next section. And so at this point, we've kind of already committed to it in our heads.
So the guy who holds the record, did he run it or walk it?
It's a combination of the thing. At this point, you're doing both. You're never all walking or you're never all running.
Okay.
But my friend, going back to how many I'd done before, I did the 100 miles with my coach, and my other friend, he had been training for it as well, and so I got to experience some more mileage with him. Like we kind of figured this thing out, this crazy ultra-marathoning together. And then we set this goal. And went out to do this with both of us trained together. We would come and train together, do rucks. We did all kinds of different kinds of training. But there's not really a whole lot that can prepare you for it. We ended up running the Palmetto Trail in 10 days and 11 hours and something like that.
So you trained several months though?
Yes. Yes.
So total you did 500, how many miles?
It was almost right at 500 miles.
Almost, so just shy, 500 miles.
I think it was 500 miles. I'm not sure that it might have been over.
Okay. So 500 miles in 10 days.
Yep.
10
and a half days.
10 and a half days. 10 days, 12 hours.
Yeah.
50 miles a day.
Yeah.
Or just shy of 50.
Just shy of 50 miles.
How much of that was running?
Maybe 50%. So our average pace, our goal was about 16 minutes a mile. And there's we'd run, walk a lot, is what we did. And then a lot of times we were just fast walking. And you learn a lot in something like that. Mistakes were made. We had
mistakes were made.
Yeah, I mean because there was no good real map system for this trail. We're trying to set a record, and at one point I'm looking at what I have for a GPS map and trying to make sure we're on the right path. And we're going down, and we're going down basically what is a gravel road. We crossed a main highway to get on this next section, and we're going down a gravel road, and then we get to the end of the gravel road and get on a trail. When we get to this trail, there's a sign, and the sign has a Palmetto Trail arrow. Well, the arrow doesn't point back the way we came. It points down this other trail that runs parallel to the road we were on. Well, we're trying to set a record here. So we have to walk back 3 miles to do this section of this trail and come back. And it was towards, I think we were on day like 9 at this point. Or no, it was day 8. But we were just
Legs hurt?
Doing an extra 3 miles, well, actually it ended up being an extra 6 miles, was very, very discouraging. My buddy, it took some time for him to get over that one. I mean, I was the one looking at the maps. It was my fault, but in my defense, it looked like we were on the trail according to the GPS because they were so parallel to each other.
What year was this?
It was 2023. Yeah. What is this? 2025? Wasn't last year. Yeah, it was 2023.
Have you run anything long since then?
Not since then. I was supposed to do. Actually, I signed up to do a 100-miler last year, and I was in the race, and I got to mile 30 something, and it's a race in Asheville. You go up and down, basically to Mount Mitchell like 3 times. Well, essentially is what you do. Well, coming down one time, my pole got stuck and I fell and tore my labrum. And I didn't know what had happened. I knew it didn't feel right, but we ended up stitching it up. They gave me a lidocaine shot there on the trail. We had a makeshift sling, and I hiked up to Mount Mitchell, which was the next point, and with one arm, and we get up there. When you come down the other side, you have to go on this trail that uses ropes and your hands. And so I'm like pretty determined to go. I'm not hurting. I'm not in serious pain, but I mean, obviously it hurts, but it's not detrimental. And so my crew is trying to. My buddy who was running with me, who was Sean, which is the guy that did the 500 miles with me, he's like right there with me. He knows, we know each other well enough at this point when we need to say no, when we've got to quit. And he knows that I'm not going to quit. Like somebody's going to have to basically make me quit. Well, one of the crew is, telling me, well, saying all the things reason that I probably should stop.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, well, but I still am okay. I can still finish. And then one of the aid people comes along, and first responders, and they're trying to talk me out of it pretty strongly. And because he basically is like, well, you're an adult, you can do whatever you want, but this next section is pretty rough. I don't think you should do it with one arm. So I ended up deciding to call it. And, because at the end of the day, this is still a hobby.
Yeah.
I still have to go to work.
And you're not making money off of this.
I'm not making money off of this. So I called it. It was a hard choice, but I did it. So I didn't get a 100-miler in last year, which was a goal. It just didn't happen. Didn't have time.
Have you guys, and we'll probably wrap this up here.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. No. This is fascinating, and I'm shocked at how quickly this has gone. Have you guys talked about coming over to my state and doing the Barclays Marathon?
Yeah, that's a whole nother
level
thing. Yeah, I have looked at it.
I backpacked that area. Like I was just there 2 or 3 weeks ago backpacking, and it's horrible to backpack.
Yeah,
it's the highest point on the plateau. What's the mileage of that marathon?
Well, it's
5 marathons, isn't it?
Yeah, but.
It's up and down Frozen Head State Park, which overlooks Brushy Mountain. The marathon was developed because of James Earl Ray's escape.
Yeah.
And he was gone for 24 hours. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing came about, they want to say, how far could you get in 24 hours? Yeah. Escaping out of Brushy Mountain, which is now closed as a prison.
Yeah.
So
it's a loop course.
It's a loop course, and you reverse it.
Yeah.
I think 5 times.
Yes, that sounds right.
And they've only had 12, 13, 14 people finish it since the 80s.
Yeah.
But the elevation change, they say, is like climbing Everest multiple times.
It's very terrible. You're climbing through, it's like you're escaping prison, because there's one point you have to climb this hill that is just covered in barbed wire.
Yeah.
Not barbed wire, sorry.
Briars. I was actually at that hill because At the top of that hill is a fire tower. Kind of halfway up the hill is the old coal mine that the inmates used to go into to mine coal. You can still look into it. We were just there taking pictures because I'd never been to that part of the trail. But we looked up that, you can see the route that the runners run. And I was with one of my guys, Dylan, and we were going to take a shortcut. And I said, I don't want to climb that. We'll take the zigzagging route, but that's horrible.
Yeah.
And I think you got to do it 3 times.
Yeah. And typically, that race is notorious for having bad weather.
Yeah.
Having rain, cold. It just.
Last year, the first woman ever finished.
Yeah.
It was a British girl.
Yep.
Made it by like 20 seconds.
Yep. And he didn't. The guy who designed it, he didn't think a woman could actually finish it. So it was pretty amazing.
You guys ought to do it.
It's not easy to get in.
Really?
Well, so there's 2 different races, too. So the one that she won is different.
It's not the traditional Barclays?
It is, but that one you have to actually complete. So what makes that so hard is you have to be back in a certain time, every time. And if you don't get back by that time, you get cut off.
Okay.
So you can get cut off before you...
Even...
Yeah. I forget what the time is, but you do the loop in a certain amount of time. But if you don't make it in that time... You're done. You're done. And so that's what makes it so hard. So the other one that anybody can get in is you have I think it's 24 hours to do as many loops as you can. Okay. Which is, anybody can get in that one. And that's part of the reason, I guess I haven't done it, is I want to do the real one. And it's really hard to get into that. Like, you almost have to be invited to do that. But I don't know. It is on the list. It's just, there's a lot of races on the list. So, you have to figure out what's... You're
39, so you're kind of running out of time.
Nah. But yeah, so after the 500 miles, that was an eye-opener, a completely different experience. I think, I would like to get another 100-miler in this year. But I'll say this, go back to the spiritual thing as we, kind of closing this out. I have learned that just as much, we've talked about how my progression of all this is.
Yeah.
And I have it's just part of who I am. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it to the best that I can.
Yeah.
And then I also have this idea that, desire, I don't want to just do the easy thing. Let's make it as challenging as possible and see how far I can push myself.
Sure.
And there's, like you said, there's all these things that in order for you to be able to achieve that you have to have.
Yeah.
You got to have a coach. You got to have the goal.
Yeah.
And then you got to have
drive.
You got to be able. You got to do it. You got to do the work to get to this goal.
We talk about if your whole life is decisions, your whole life is made of crossroads, and there's always the easier path. No matter what the crossroad is, there's always the easier one. And most of America, their whole life is the totality of the easier route. Mm-hmm. And all that does is diminish your accomplishments.
Yeah.
Whereas
your existence.
Yeah, I mean, you are the sum of the easier option.
Yeah.
What a horrible testimony. Your life is the sum of the easier option. Yeah. Rather than every time you come to a crossroad, take the harder one, just to do it.
Just to do it.
Just to take the harder.
To see if you can. To push yourself. And I have a kind of a motto, whatever. What I look at things is, as I push myself physically, I have to push myself spiritually.
Yeah.
Like I can't, and it's part of what helps me keep that in check. It's like I recognize that I'm able to push my body to these extremes, and then I ask myself. It's kind of that mirror. It says, well, how are you pushing yourself with your relationship with God?
Yeah.
Where are you lacking? Where are you not training?
Yeah.
Where are you not setting goals in your walk with God? And so that's kind of like, that's how I use the two together for me. And that's why I think it works, for me.
Where does your brain go when you run 100 miles?
It goes a lot of places.
Just daydreaming?
Well, you change your perspective multiple times. You learn I gave this analogy one time about running, and it was if you run down a straight road, a perfectly straight road, and you're doing like sprints, that road, there's nothing to tell you that it's changing, except for the pain and that you're experiencing. So the only thing you have to go off is like metrics, numbers, and that's terrible. It's really hard to do that. It's like painful. There's nothing fun about it. But if you go down a curvy trail with roots and turns, and it's very distracting. It's very easy just to get into that, and you forget about things. And it's very similar to life. That we go through these times where it's just like the straight, and it's just the same monotonous thing every day. I get up, I go to work. I get up, I go to work, and you have to learn to change your focus. Yeah. And it teaches, in ultra running, you're going from fun at the beginning. It's, this is great. You've got all this energy. You're just so excited. You're getting to do this thing you've been training maybe 3 months for. And then usually it's about 13 hours, 14 hours in, things are starting to hurt. Maybe there's less fun. You may not be at the point of just like misery. You're just, okay, I got to refocus. Let's eat. We got to keep going. Thankfully at that point, usually you have somebody come with you. You have a pacer. So that's where it helps change your mind. You're like, I get somebody new to talk to. Yeah. I get somebody to help take my mind off of the fact that this is starting to really hurt. I don't want to continue. I'm chafing. I'm sticky. I'm hot. I'm gross. I want to be done. Why am I doing this to myself? This hurts. So it's just literally constantly playing these mind games. Who knows? Sometimes it's 10 minutes, every minute. Sometimes it's every 30 minutes. It constantly changes. But, it really teaches you how to do that in life.
Yeah. Years ago, I met a guy who worked on the crab boats up in Alaska in winter. And he taught me something they called the pain crescendo theory. And who knows if they made it up or if it's a real thing, but it has helped me. But he said, so I said, isn't it cold? He said, it's pain, it's horrible. You're out there in the North Atlantic. You have to beat ice off the front of the ship. The waves freeze, you beat the ice off. It's that cold, and you're working crab traps, so you have these monkey gripper gloves, but they don't really work. So you're out there barehanded. It's sub-zero or whatever. Yeah. And he said, so what the pain crescendo theory says is you're out there, and your hands, you can tolerate it for a few minutes, and then your hands hurt so bad, your mind says, I can't bear this. And yet, contradictory, you're like, but I'm bearing it. Mm-hmm. So it's not unbearable. And he said, and you raise your pain crescendo a little bit. Yeah. So you work another minute or two, and you're like, no, now this is unbearable. No, I'm bearing it. So it is not technically unbearable. So you can work another minute or two. And I said, well, how long do you do that? He said, you do that till your hands go numb, and then you're in trouble. I said, what happens then? He said, then you go in the cabin, you put your hands in your armpits, you warm them back up, and you start all over again. And this guy was making, I don't remember, like 90 grand in the summer. This is back in the 90s. The amount of money they were making, it's worth the pain. Right. I just think sometimes the cost isn't worth the benefit.
Yeah, that's the I guess that's the thing. Is
it worth it?
Yeah, and that goes back to training, honestly. I think back to the first 100 I completed, and I recognized some training faults. It wasn't my coach's fault. I just think back at how I was training. Yeah. That's another interesting point is you can get the workouts, but you have to do them just right. And you actually have to learn yourself how to do the workout for yourself and to do it the right way to train your body. And I learned that through experience that, okay, I need to do this way in order to produce the correct result. Sure. Once I did that 100, that was just so much better. It was enjoyable. Sure, it hurt, but when I got done, I wasn't.
But I'm sure you also correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm thinking about how things in my own life, you get familiar with the pain. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like. This is what the pain of this feels like, and it's not going to kill me. It hurts, but it's not technically unbearable because I'm bearing it. Yeah. So let's run another 20 miles.
Yeah, it gets, that's part of the training too, is you actually train your brain through the training of what hurts and how it can sustain that. Yeah. You do these long runs, like usually there's a section where you do a multiple long run weekend to simulate the stress that your body's going to be going through.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does get numb, but it's just really the training. If you train right, it hurts, but it doesn't hurt, if that makes sense. You've already trained your brain to know that you can get, just like with the pain crescendo, like you said, you're like, okay, I know this hurts, but I know that I can go a little bit harder.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no question anymore. Yes, the hands hurt. Yes, they're almost numb, but you already know it. It's like it's like the guys that would go in and they warm their hands. Well, they warm their hands, but they know they can go back out, and now they know how long they can.
Endure. It's experience. You know how to manage it, the pain. You know what your body's capable of. You know how to regulate it. Yeah. And so you're constantly, it's like redlining a car. You just get the tachometer up there and you just bounce it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like that with their walk with God. I mean, trials and tribulations. We go through things, and the first time it's like, oh, I'm not going to survive this, God. You're crazy. What are you putting me through this for? And then
in 10 years, you look back and like, I used to flinch at that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's what happens before breakfast.
Yeah.
My wife summarizes it this way, because what she says is ringing in my head right now. She tells our kids, and even some of the ladies she disciples, she says it this way: we can do hard things too. Mm-hmm. That's just like encapsulates it. We can do hard things too. Man, good. I appreciate this. Yeah. I knew you ran races. I didn't realize this much, this long, this dumb. I've never met anybody to run races like this, so I appreciate it. Appreciate you sitting down with us.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, man.
So,
thanks.
Right, thanks.
The Apostle Paul used many tools in his bag when it came to relating biblical and spiritual truths to the people he cared for. We know he talked about agricultural allegories. He talked about shepherding allegories. And I think if we pause to think about it, we can consider he used Olympic allegories as well. The most famous of all Olympic allegories the Apostle Paul used and other New Testament authors used was that of running, or running a race. And I want to talk to us a little bit about what we can glean from these verses in the epistles that talk about running, and running our race specifically. If you're a Bible student, your mind is probably already thinking about some of these verses, like run with patience the race set before you. That's one we'll look at here in a moment. Paul saying at the end of his life in 2 Timothy chapter 4, I have kept the course, I have finished my race. And then Paul also said at the end of 1 Corinthians chapter 9, when everybody runs, only one wins, so run that you may win. And all of these involve references to Olympic events. In Paul's time, there was what was called the Pan-Hellenic Games. And the Pan-Hellenic just means Olympic Games across Hellenism, across what was formerly the Greek Empire. And there were 4 different locations in which these type games were held. They were, of course, the forerunners to our modern Olympics. Corinth, oddly enough, was a location for one of these Olympic meets. Also, Olympus, and then Delian or Delios, where they had the Delian Games. But the point is, Paul's readers, his audience in the first century of the Roman Empire, understood what these allegories were implying because they were familiar with Olympic-styled games. So I want to look at Hebrews 12. We're going to start there and look at this because we're familiar with this passage. It's a very encouraging passage, but there's some things we might be able to retrieve from it that we hadn't seen before. So I'm going to read out of the King James, Hebrews 12:1. Wherefore, seeing we are also compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. So I'm going to read it again. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses. The also is a reference to Hebrews chapter 11 and this great company of believers that is chronicled there by the author of Hebrews, beginning there with Abel and his more excellent sacrifice than Cain's, and then concluding with these whom the world was not worthy, who they were sawn asunder, they were tempted, they were slain with the sword, they wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, and torment. But this famous passage has kind of a double revelation for us in that when it uses the word race is actually the Greek word agon. And agon doesn't just mean race. Agon is a reference to the actual stadium that the races took place in. And we, through contextual clues, not me, but a philologist, a linguistical expert, they can look at the context and then translate that word as race, because it says, let us run with patience the race, or the agon that is set before us. But fascinating for us is that agon is a reference to the stadium. And what do you put in a stadium? A great cloud of witnesses, a great company of witnesses. So the implication in verse 1 is this really cool word picture that as we run our race called our Christian walk, our walk with God in the Spirit by faith, we have a world that is a stadium, a world that is full of spectators. Now, I've heard it taught, I've even taught that great company of witnesses are the saints that have gone before us, and they're looking at us from the grandstand of heaven. And that may be true, but I also want to apply it that even in this life, you have non-believers that are watching you compete in this race. They're not a part of the race. It's your race. It's your race that you're running for God. It's my race. And we have to be mindful that we're running this race and we're living this life out in front of non-believers, folks who are spectators. Maybe you attend a church and you recognize that there are back row believers. These are Christians who aren't really interested in participating. They're just spectators, in which case you have a great company of witnesses witnessing what you're doing. And anybody who's ever competed, whether in sport events or Olympic type stadium events, they can tell you, knowing that there are people watching you spurs you on to do better. Knowing that there are people there cheering for you, and in any true stadium, people cheering against you, that just puts a fight in you. I've been to a lot of hockey games. I've been to less football games. And you can tell when the home team crowd is excited for their team. There's cheering and there's chanting and there's cheerleading. They call it the home field advantage. And the opposing team recognizes they're playing on hostile territory. But even in that stadium, even in that football agon, there are both people for and people against. There are witnesses that are witnessing their team win, and there's people witnessing their team lose. And I think we could probably more accurately apply that to our Christian walk. There are people watching us run our race and they're for us, and there are people watching us run our race and they're against us. They're cheering against us. They want to see us fail. They want to see us fall. They want to see us falter. But regardless of whether this cloud of witnesses is the heavenly cloud, and I don't mind preaching it that way, or it's a reference to those that are around us, and I don't mind preaching it that way, we need to know that people are watching us, and therefore there's a responsibility to do our very best. There was a statistic that said when you're in a local church in any kind of leadership position, whether you're a department head or whether you're a worship leader or just on the worship team, that at any given moment there are 7 people watching you and maybe even navigating their life by how you live. That statistic alone, assuming it's accurate, should encourage us to walk a little taller, a little more upright, a little holier. I'm sure it puts maybe a pressure you're not used to on you, and you might even say it's unfair. And nothing says the kingdom is fair. Nothing says walking with God is going to be fair, because you're going to be attacked by the enemy. And we have this responsibility to live for Jesus Christ, for his glory. And if we will do it as unto Jesus, those that watch us will have something to model and pattern their life after. But let's get back to this race here. It says, seeing that we are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight. Any good runner knows you don't go try to run a long distance race wearing muck boots and a winter jacket. No, even when you watch them do the Boston Marathon or these high-end marathons, they'll do it in a colder weather, typically in the 40s or 50s. And even those guys running in the 40s and 50s degrees Fahrenheit, they're still in a tank top. They're still in shorty shorts. Those shoes weigh next to nothing. They're super designed. They have foam heels and everything's lightweight because they want to shed the weight that so doth easily beset them. And so Paul's invoking that, assuming Paul wrote Hebrews, we don't know if he did or not. The author invokes this weight loss, this shedding of weight. And that speaks to us of the hindrances, what things hold you down, what hobbies prevent you from running for God, what afflictions, what attitudes. Weights aren't always sins. The next word used there is sin. Weights and sins are two different things, but they will both hinder you. And it says as much, they so doth easily beset us or trip us up. We have two things we have to get rid of as we run this ultramarathon for God. This Christian walk is not a sprint. It's not a 100-yard dash. It's not even an 800-meter race. It's not even a relay. It's an ultramarathon that we run every day till the day we die. And that being the case, what in your life, what in our life can we get rid of? What are the weights, the distractions? Is it social media? Is it video games? Is it too much sports? Is it you've got your kids involved in 9 sporting events and 2 performance venues, whether it's choir, chorale, drama, theater, orchestra? You and I are called upon by God Almighty to shed life weight that we might run this race. And then there's the sins. Sins do easily beset you. We know to get rid of sins, and that means repent. It means turn, go the other way. It means seek God for help. It means to train harder, invoke the grace and the Spirit of God upon your life that you might get rid of the sin that so doth easily beset us. And then the final point, it says, let us run with patience the race set before us. Every one of us has a race. Every one of us has a lane that we have to finish our race in. And it is a race that requires patience. Patience is enduring the same thing day after day after day. I'm watching, as a pastor, I'm watching Christians get bored with this race. I'm watching Christians want the lane to be a little bit more entertaining. I'm watching Christians get out of their lane, changing lanes, thinking maybe somebody else's lane is better than their lane. But true to the Olympic allegory, if you change lanes, you will get into an unlawful lane. And if you get into an unlawful lane, you will be disqualified. You will fail to finish. And I fear that many Christians are failing to finish because they're running somebody else's race, or they're in somebody else's lane, or they're in church, but they're not in the right church, or they go to church but not faithful enough, or maybe they changed churches because they were chasing money. There's a lot of different ways we can get out of the God-ordained lane and fail to finish our course. That brings us to our next verse, 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 6. Paul said, "For I am now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand." Verse 7, "I have fought a good fight. I have finished my race. I have kept the faith." Now, fighting a good fight, that's invoking a Greek game as well, where they had wrestling and this other more like jiu-jitsu and boxing. There was really no rules to it. Sometimes these Olympians died, but there was like a boxing and a wrestling and then this third type of fighting, and that is invoked there. I have fought a good fight. He's talking about the competition that this Christian life is, and that you give it all you've got, that you endure to the end, you fight the good fight of faith. And he says, I have finished my race. A modern translation say, I've finished my race. I've kept the faith. Henceforth, there's laid up for me a crown of righteousness. Well, that crown or that wreath is what they would have given to those who got awards. They didn't get gold medals in their Olympics. They got these crowns, these wreaths that were laid on their head to symbolize their completion, their success, their winning. It's the equivalent of a first place. But Paul said he finished his race. Now, that's an interesting statement because it would imply that not everybody does. I recently asked my church, we were kind of teaching along these lines, and as I was ministering, I asked them, church, what percentage of the body of Christ do you think in America, what percentage of Christians actually finished the race God gave them? I said, you think it's 80%, 70%? The congregation says, no, we know American Christians. There's no way 80% of the Christians in America are finishing their race. I said, what about 50%? You think 50% of the Christians, half the body of Christ in America, do you think they're finishing their race? They make it to heaven's door, having kept the faith, having done everything God called them to do? The church said, no, there's no way. We know American Christians. There's no way 50% of the Christians in this nation are actually, number one, running the race, much less finishing it. So we whittled it down. We all felt pretty good about 10%. We agreed maybe 10%. 1 in 10 truly born again, water-baptized, God-fearing believers in this nation will actually finish their race. We all felt pretty good about that. So then I asked the congregation, I said, okay, yeah, I agree. Let's agree. It's unscientific. It's not necessary. Thus says the Lord. It's just what we kind of, lick our fingers, stick it to the wind. 1 in 10 Christians in this nation is going to finish their race. So then I asked the church, does that include this church? Does that mean 10% of you is all we're going to do? And the church got real quiet on that because they knew they were caught. They had no choice but to say, yeah, that applies to us. So I said, okay, that just means 1 in 10 of you are actually trying. 1 in 10 will actually finish their race. Paul was able to say, I finished my race. What does it take to finish your race? Number one, you got to find it. You got to find what that race is. Chasing the American dream will keep you from finding the race God has ordained for you, because the American dream and the plan of God are two totally different ideas. I'll say that again. It's worth repeating 4 or 5 times. But the American dream and the plan of God are two totally different ideas. The plan of God teaches you to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow him. And the American dream teaches you to wish upon a star, click your heels together. There's no place like home. Grab Jiminy Cricket and Tinkerbell, sprinkle it with some faith dust, and command God to bless it. And maybe if you work hard enough, you can be a social media influencer. That's the American dream. That sounds nothing like the Gospels. It sounds nothing like the Pauline epistles. It sounds nothing like New Testament theology. So we choose to throw away the American dream. Now, God wants us to come up in life, yes, and he will promote you, yes. But when we start looking to the world around us to navigate our course of life, we automatically forfeit the destiny that we have in Christ. The only way you and I will be able to finish our race is, number one, to find it. And you're not going to find the race God has for you on social media. You're going to find it in the Word of God and in the house of God and in prayer with God. And then once you find that course, you start running and you endure to the end. That way you'll be able to say, like Paul did, I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, and not for me only. Now he says not for me only because what he's doing is he's balancing what he wrote in 1 Corinthians 9. Let's hop over there. He's balancing what he said in 1 Corinthians 9, because in 1 Corinthians 9, he says, when people run, only one person wins. So let's read that. I'm going to read it to you out of a New Living Translation, 1 Corinthians chapter 9, about verse 24 or so. Maybe it's NAS. He says, verse 24, do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win. Only one receives the prize. So he's invoking the literal Corinthian games. There was a game there at Corinth. So he uses a lot of Olympic allegories there in Corinth when he writes to them in the epistles. But here he says only one person gets to win that race. But to balance it there in 2 Timothy, he says, there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, and not for me only, but for all those that love the Lord. And those that finish their race, that finish according to their calling. Let's finish reading that verse to get it accurate. We want to be as accurate as possible. He said, henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but unto all of them also that love his appearing. So everybody can win this race, because everybody has their own lane to run. So I'm going to keep reading in 1 Corinthians 9:25, and everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control in all things. So this is another secret to finishing your race. You have to walk in self-control. When you run marathons and ultramarathons, everything you do is disciplined. You discipline your training, you discipline your diet, you discipline your time. That's the only way you're going to finish your race. Really, to finish your race in Christ, you have to be focused on it almost 24/7. These ultramarathoners, these Olympic-level elite athletes, they go to bed thinking about running, they dream about running, they wake up running, they go to bed running, they start all over. Everything's about running. Their Google searches are about running. They read Runner's Magazine. They're looking at the newest shoes, the newest shorts, the newest hats, the newest water bottles, the newest workout regimen. They live for running so that they can run their race and finish their course. We're going to have to do something very similar as believers. We can't just go to church once a week or twice a month, think we're right with God, and even know what the race is, much less run it through the enduring pain to completion. He said, you got to be self-controlled in all things. They then do it to receive a perishable wreath or crown, but we an imperishable. Again, that's a wreath. The word there, I think it's going to be diadem or diadem, or it may be the other word for crown, which means the wreath of Stephanos. That's it. The wreath that perishes, the olive wreath or the willow wreath. We see it, in the Greek coins. Caesar always has that little green thing around his head. That's a Stephanos. The crown of metal is the diadem in the Greek, a diadem. Paul said, therefore, in verse 26, therefore I run in such a way as not without aim. That has to be our walk. Every day we're walking anyway. Every day we're serving Jesus anyway. Every day we're living life. We might as well do it with focus. We might as well do it with aim. We might as well get up in the morning, pray that we honor God throughout the day, and then pray that when we go to sleep, we wake up in the morning and do it all over again. I like to teach a concept called daily destiny. And by that I mean we have to seek God for his daily destiny that we might fulfill our bigger destiny. A lot of Christians in that American spirit, that American dream optimism, they hope to fulfill their destiny, but they don't serve God day by day. And so if you don't serve God day by day and fulfill your daily destiny of being with him and seeking him and praising him and reading his Bible and sacrificing your flesh and your emotions and your sin, you're never going to add that up to find your mega destiny, your long-term destiny. The only way to finish your race is to run a little bit every day. Paul said, I run in such a way as not without aim. I box in such a way as not beating the air. Another reference to the boxing of the Olympic Games. He said, verse 27, but I discipline my body and make it my slave so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified. Once again, one of the secrets to running the Christian race is a disciplined life, a disciplined body. He's talking about his physical body. He disciplined his body. The whole context is an allegory of fighting and running. He says the same thing in 2 Corinthians 4. I fought the good fight. I ran a good race. It's a double allegory, double reference in two epistles, about 15 years apart. But the key to it is to live a disciplined life as a Christian. So how do I run my race? How do I finish my course? You have to live disciplined every day. Disciplined in what you eat, disciplined in what you watch, disciplined in how you spend your time, disciplined in when you wake up, disciplined in when you go to bed. A disciplined life accomplishes more. How do we obey Hebrews 12? Run with patience the race set before us. We have to be disciplined. When you know that this is a marathon, you're not trying to sprint. You're doing it little by little, consistently and faithfully until you finish your race and cross the finish line. If not, as Paul said, I do this because if not, when I've preached to others, I might end up disqualified. Now, to me, it's two witnesses that terrify me. Paul was fearful he might be disqualified. Paul also finally said at the end of his life, I actually did finish my race. To me, it seems as though here, as he's writing 1 Corinthians, which was written about 59 AD, he's writing that, and he's like, it's possible I could be disqualified. It's possible I start this race and end up DQ'd. But as he writes his last epistle that we have record of, 2 Timothy chapter 4, he says, I have finished my race. You almost hear a sigh of relief, like, whew, I did it. I made it to the finish line. I made it to the finish line. And he said, there's a crown of righteousness laid up and prepared for everybody that does finish their race. So hear me in this. Number one, you've got to live for God in such a way you find what your race is. And once you have honed in on that race, and you can find that in the scriptures, pray, read your Bible, go to church, find the church God's called you to, be faithful there, love your spouse, raise your babies. This is part of your race. This is the foundational level of your race. You stay faithful to that, you'll stay in your lane, and God will give you the next stage and the next stage. How do we stay in the lane? We stay disciplined. You stay disciplined in your flesh, disciplined in your mind, disciplined in your emotions, disciplined in your money, disciplined in your food, disciplined with your health. You'll continue to run this race. It's not a sprint. We run it little by little. My friend said that in running 500 miles over 10 days or running 100 miles in 24 hours, sometimes your miles are 12 and 13 and 14 minute miles. That's a really slow mile, but you're running 100 miles. It doesn't need to be fast. He's capable of a 6-minute or sub 6-minute mile in a short distance, but when you're running long term, you slow down. You take this thing easy. You slow down and you pace yourself. This thing called life is an ultramarathon. We don't have to sprint. We don't have to be the fastest kid on the block. We just have to finish our race. And we do it with joy, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, or the beginner and the completer of our faith, who he himself was the warrior who won everything. Let me read that passage to you out of the New Living Translation. This will be my last verse. Let me pull it up here, because I really like the way the New Living Translation describes it, because the way it paints the picture, it's like Jesus was the winner before us. We do this. We run our race by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. He's already the champion. He's run the race. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. Even verse 2 invokes all sorts of Olympic parallels. Amen. I hope you've been blessed by this. Keep looking unto Jesus, and you make sure you finish your race. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us today. If you've been blessed by this interview and teaching, please feel free to subscribe and leave a review. It will help me continue to grow this podcast. My aim is to interview Christians from all over the world and from every facet of life so we can appreciate the body of Christ and what he's been doing and continues to do in the earth. Theology, Things, and Stuff is produced by Engrafted Word Church, located in Cookeville, Tennessee. For more information, visit us at theologythingsandstuff.com. God bless you, and thank you.